The Rejected Queen. When the Broken Girl Burned the Kingdom. Welcome to a story of survival, betrayal, and ultimate revenge. If you love tales of power, forbidden magic, and the rise of an underdog who becomes unstoppable, stick around until the end. You won't believe how she goes from servant to sovereign. Drop a comment with your city so I know who's watching from where, and hit that like button if you're ready for a 2-hour journey you won't forget. The first time Seren Vale understood what she was worth, she was 6 years old and bleeding into the dirt. Not from a fall, not from an accident, from a lesson. "Get up," the pack trainer had said, standing over her with a whip coiled in his hand like a sleeping snake. "Defects don't get to quit." She'd gotten up. She always got up. That was 15 years ago. Now, at 21, Seren knelt in the stone corridor outside the royal hall, scrubbing dried blood from the floor with a brush that had lost half its bristles. The blood wasn't hers this time. It belonged to a guard who'd been flogged for falling asleep on duty. They'd dragged him past her without a word, and she'd been handed the brush without explanation. That was how it worked in Varkesh. You didn't ask questions, you didn't make eye contact, you survived. The kingdom sat like a scar on the edge of the known world, a brutal stretch of mountains and frozen rivers, where only the strong thrived and the weak were ground into dust. It was ruled by wolves, not metaphorically, actual wolves, shifters who could take human form but never quite lost the predator underneath. And Seren? She was supposed to be one of them, supposed to be, but she'd never shifted, not once. Not even a flicker of claws or fangs, no gold eyes, no instinct to hunt, just a human body that refused to become anything else. In Varkesh, that made her defective. Defective meant bottom rank. It meant sleeping in the servant quarters that smelled like mildew and burnt oil. It meant eating last, speaking last, existing last. It meant being handed a brush and told to clean up someone else's punishment without a shred of dignity. She dipped the brush into the bucket, watched the water turn pink, and kept scrubbing. The corridor stretched endlessly before her, cold and gray and indifferent. Torches flickered along the walls, casting shadows that danced like restless spirits. Somewhere deeper in the stronghold, she could hear the sounds of life, laughter from the guard barracks, the clang of weapons in the training yard, the low murmur of wolves discussing pack business. She wasn't part of any of it. She never had been. Pathetic. Seren didn't look up. She knew the voice. Mira Ashlyn, one of the Alpha King's inner circle. Beautiful in the way that sharp things were beautiful, all edges and cold elegance. She stood at the end of the hall with 2 other wolves, all of them dressed in the dark leathers that marked them as royal guard. "Still crawling around on your knees, Vale?" Mira's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I'd say you were born for it, but we both know you weren't born for anything." The other 2 laughed. One of them, a broad-shouldered man named Corvin, nudged Mira with his elbow. "Think she even understands what you're saying? Defects don't process shame the way real wolves do." The third one, a woman with a scar running down her cheek, crouched down to Seren's level. "Hey, look at me when we're talking to you." Seren kept her eyes on the floor, on the brush, on the water that was now more red than clear. The woman grabbed her chin, forcing her head up. "I said, look at me." Seren met her gaze. Blank, empty. She'd learned years ago that showing emotion only made it worse. The woman's eyes narrowed. Nothing there, like looking at a corpse. "That's because she is," Mira said, examining her nails. "Walking, breathing, but already dead, just hasn't figured it out yet." Corvin snorted. "Why do we even keep her around? She can't fight, can't shift, can't do anything useful." "Entertainment," Mira said simply. "Every pack needs something to look down on. Reminds us what we're not." The woman released Seren's chin with a shove that sent her sprawling backward into the bucket. Water splashed across the floor, mixing with the blood she'd been trying to clean. They laughed and walked away, their voices echoing down the corridor. Seren sat in the puddle for a moment, water soaking through her worn dress before slowly getting to her feet. She righted the bucket, refilled it from the well in the courtyard, and started over. This was survival. This was normal. Her hands were raw and cracked from the cold water and harsh soap. Her knees ached from kneeling on stone for hours. Her back protested every movement. But she didn't stop. Because stopping meant thinking. and thinking meant remembering that this was her life, that it had always been her life, that it would always be her life until the day she died, forgotten and unmourned. She scrubbed harder. The blood came up slowly, reluctantly, leaving faint rust-colored stains in the grout between the stones. No matter how hard she worked, the stains never fully disappeared. The stone remembered, the stronghold remembered, Varkesh remembered everything, especially failure. Des. 2 hours later, her hands were bleeding, and the corridor was as clean as it was going to get. Seren stood, wiping her palms on her dress, and picked up the bucket. The water inside was dark and viscous. She'd have to dump it in the waste trench behind the kitchens, far from where the nobles walked. She made her way through the servants' passages, narrow corridors that ran like veins through the stronghold, hidden from view. This was where people like her existed, out of sight, out of mind. The passages were dimly lit and smelled of damp stone and old cooking grease. Other servants passed her without acknowledgement. A girl carrying linens, a boy hauling firewood, an old man with a limp who'd been a guard once, before an injury rendered him useless. They were all ghosts here, moving through the walls while the real world happened on the other side. Seren dumped the water and returned the bucket to the supply closet. Then she headed toward the kitchens where she'd been assigned for the evening shift. The head cook, a massive woman named Brigga with forearms like tree trunks, barely glanced at her when she entered. "Vegetables?" Brigga grunted, gesturing toward a crate in the corner. "Peel and chop. Everything. We're feeding 200 tonight." Seren nodded and got to work. The kitchen was hot and chaotic. Pots boiled over open flames, meat sizzled on spits. Servants rushed back and forth with platters and bowls, shouting orders and curses in equal measure. Seren found a corner near the back and started peeling carrots. The work was mindless, repetitive. Her hands moved on autopilot while her mind drifted. She thought about Mira's words. Already dead. Just hasn't figured it out yet. Was that true? Sometimes it felt true. She had no friends, no family. Her parents had abandoned her the moment it became clear she wouldn't shift. In Varkesh, family was pack, and pack was power. A child who couldn't shift was a liability, a weakness. So they'd left her at the stronghold gates with nothing but a name and walked away. She'd been 4 years old. The pack had taken her in, but not out of kindness. Defects had their uses. They could clean and cook and carry without complaint. They could be punished without consequence. They could be forgotten without guilt. She was 21 now, 17 years of servitude, 17 years of invisible suffering. How much longer could she do this? How much longer before Mira's words became prophecy? A sharp voice cut through her thoughts. "Vale, pay attention." Seren looked up. Brigga was glaring at her, hands on her hips. "You've been peeling the same carrot for 5 minutes. We don't have time for daydreaming. Get it together or get out." "Sorry," Seren muttered, quickening her pace. Brigga shook her head and turned back to the stove, muttering something about useless defects under her breath. Seren kept her head down and worked faster. The pile of vegetables grew. Carrots, potatoes, onions that made her eyes water, turnips that smelled like earth and decay. Around her, the kitchen hummed with controlled chaos. Servants barked orders. Knives thudded against cutting boards. Steam hissed from boiling pots. And then, silence. Not complete silence. The fire still crackled. The pots still bubbled. But the voices stopped. Seren looked up. Everyone in the kitchen had gone still, frozen, staring toward the entrance. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair pulled back from a face that could have been carved from granite. Eyes the color of molten gold that swept across the room like a predator assessing prey. Darien Kor, the Alpha King. Seren's heart stuttered. Kings didn't come to kitchens. Kings didn't acknowledge the existence of places like this, where the lowest of the low kept the stronghold running. But here he was. Brigga dropped into a bow so fast her knees cracked. "Your Majesty, how can we serve you?" Darien's gaze moved across the room, pausing briefly on each face before moving to the next. When his eyes landed on Seren, she felt it like a physical touch. She looked away immediately, focusing on the half-peeled potato in her hands. "Carry on," Darien said, his voice low and commanding. Then he turned and left as abruptly as he'd arrived. The kitchen exhaled collectively. "What was that about?" someone whispered. Inspection, maybe? Since when does the king inspect kitchens? Frigga clapped her hands. Doesn't matter. Back to work, all of you. The noise resumed, but it felt forced now. Uncertain. Seren's hands were shaking. She didn't know why the king had come, didn't know why he'd looked at her. But something about that gaze had felt different. Not disgust, not pity. Something else. She pushed the thought away and went back to peeling vegetables. The attack came 3 hours later. Seren was hauling a crate of root vegetables from the storage cellar when the first scream tore through the stronghold. She froze mid-step, the crate heavy in her arms. Screams weren't unusual in Varkesh. Punishment was public. Challenges were brutal. Wolves settled disputes with teeth and claws, and the sounds carried through stone walls. But this scream wasn't rage or dominance. It was terror, pure, primal. The kind of sound that bypassed thought and went straight to instinct. The crate slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a crash. Carrots and potatoes rolled across the stone as Seren turned toward the doorway. Another scream, closer this time, followed by the clash of metal on metal, then shouting. East Wing! They're in the East Wing! Seal the gates! Where are the guards? Someone get the... The voice cut off with a wet, choking sound. Seren's pulse kicked into overdrive. She moved toward the door, every instinct screaming at her to run the other way, but her feet carried her forward anyway. The corridor outside the kitchen was chaos. Guards sprinted past, weapons drawn, faces tight with controlled panic. Servants fled in the opposite direction, clutching children and valuables. Someone stumbled, was trampled, didn't get up. The smell hit her next. Blood, fresh and hot and everywhere. Seren pressed herself against the wall as a guard nearly ran her over. He didn't even see her. His eyes were fixed on something ahead, something she couldn't see yet. More screams, more metal, a roar that didn't sound human or wolf, but something in between. Assassins! Someone shouted. They're in the stronghold! Seren's blood turned to ice. Assassins. In Varkesh. In the stronghold itself. That wasn't supposed to be possible. The royal stronghold was a fortress built into the mountainside. Walls 10 feet thick, guards at every entrance, wards carved into the stone by witches who'd been dead for 100 years. It was untouchable. Except it wasn't. A guard stumbled past her, clutching his side. Blood poured between his fingers, dark and thick. His face was pale, lips moving without sound. He collapsed 3 feet away from her. Seren stared at the body, at the blood pooling beneath it, spreading across the stone like spilled wine. She should run. Back to the servant quarters, lock the door, hide under her cot like she'd done during the last purge 5 years ago when a rival pack had tried to overthrow the king, but her feet wouldn't move. The guard's eyes were still open, staring at nothing. She'd seen him before. Young, maybe 19. He used to smile at her sometimes when he passed her in the halls. Not mockery, just acknowledgement, a tiny kindness in a world that had none. Now he was dead, and the blood kept spreading. Seren stepped over him and moved deeper into the chaos. She didn't know why, didn't have a reason, just a pull, like a thread tied around her ribs, dragging her forward. The East Wing was a slaughterhouse, bodies everywhere, guards, servants. A young wolf Seren recognized from the training yard sprawled across the floor with his throat torn open. His eyes were still wide with surprise. She stepped over him, bile rising in her throat, and kept moving. The attackers were fast, efficient. They wore black from head to toe, faces covered by masks that revealed only their eyes. They moved with the fluid grace of trained killers, blades flashing in the torchlight. They didn't shift, didn't rely on teeth and claws. Just steel. Quick and brutal and precise. Professionals. Seren ducked into an alcove as two of them sprinted past, chasing a fleeing servant girl. She pressed herself into the shadows, hands shaking, trying to make herself small, invisible. It had always worked before. The servant girl's screams cut off abruptly. Seren closed her eyes, fighting the urge to vomit. When she opened them again, the corridor was empty except for the bodies. She forced herself to move. The royal wing was ahead. That's where the attackers were heading. She could hear the fighting intensifying in that direction. Why was she going there? Why wasn't she running? But even as she asked herself the questions, she knew the answer, because she'd spent 21 years running, hiding, making herself small and invisible and irrelevant, and for once, just once, She wanted to matter, even if it killed her. The hallway to the royal wing was narrow, lined with tapestries depicting the old kings of Arkesh. Great wolves standing on hind legs, crowns on their heads, enemies crushed beneath their paws. Seren tore past them, boots skidding on blood-slick stone. She could hear voices ahead, young, terrified. "Stay back, I'm warning you. Please, someone help." Seren's heart seized. She knew that voice. Prince Talon, the Alpha King's youngest son, barely 16. Lean and awkward in the way of boys who hadn't quite grown into their strength yet. He was supposed to be in lessons, supposed to be protected. Seren burst through the doorway into the prince's chambers. Talon was backed into the corner, eyes wide with fear, face pale as death. He held a dagger in one trembling hand, but it was clear he'd never used it for anything but ceremony. In front of him stood an assassin, tall, broad, a curved blade in each hand, both dripping red. The assassin hadn't heard her enter. All his focus was on the prince. "Nothing personal, boy," the assassin said, his voice muffled by the mask. "Just business." He raised his blades. Talon flinched back, raising the dagger in a futile gesture of defense. Seren didn't think, didn't plan, didn't calculate odds or outcomes. She just screamed, not a scream of fear, a scream of pure, undiluted rage, raw and guttural, and so loud it echoed off the stone walls like a physical force. The assassin whirled around, and Seren threw herself at him. She wasn't strong, wasn't trained, had no idea what she was doing, but she was desperate, and desperation had weight. She hit him like a battering ram, all momentum and reckless fury, and they went down in a tangle of limbs. One of his blades skittered across the floor. She clawed at his face, at his throat, at the mask covering his features. He was stronger, so much stronger. He grabbed her by the hair and yanked her head back, exposing her throat. "Stupid girl," he hissed. Then he drove his fist into her stomach. The air left her lungs in a rush. Stars exploded across her vision. He threw her off. She hit the wall hard enough to crack the plaster, and pain bloomed along her spine. But it bought Talon time. The prince bolted for the door. The assassin turned to follow. And Seren grabbed his ankle. She didn't have strength, didn't have leverage, but she had grip, and she held on. The assassin looked down at her, eyes cold and flat behind the mask. "You really want to die?" "Run!" Seren screamed at Talon. "Get help!" The assassin kicked her in the face. Her head snapped back, blood filled her mouth. But she didn't let go, couldn't let go, because if she did, Talon would die. And somehow, impossibly, that mattered more than her own survival. The assassin snarled in frustration and raised his remaining blade. "Fine, you first!" The blade came down. Seren saw it, watched it descend in what felt like slow motion, watched it punch through her chest. Cold metal, hot blood. The pain was everything. The assassin yanked the blade free, and Seren collapsed. The world tilted sideways. The ceiling swam above her. She could hear Talon screaming, distant and muffled like she was underwater. She tried to breathe. Couldn't. Tried to move. Couldn't. The assassin stepped over her body, moving toward the door where Talon had fled. And Seren realized, with strange clarity, that she was dying. She could feel it. The way warmth leaked out of her. The way darkness crept in from the edges of her vision. This was it. This was how it ended. 21 years of suffering, and she'd die on the floor of a prince's bedroom, forgotten and alone. Just like Mira had said. Already dead. Just hadn't figured it out yet. Except heat. It started in her chest where the blade had pierced her. Not the heat of blood, not the heat of fading life, something else. Something deeper. It spread through her veins like liquid fire, burning away the cold, burning away the pain, burning away everything until there was nothing left but light. White gold and impossibly bright. Seren's eyes flew open. The assassin was at the door now, reaching for the handle. The heat in her chest built and built and built until she thought she'd explode. And then, she did. Fire erupted from her body in a wave of pure incandescent energy. It wasn't flame exactly. It was light and heat and force all combined into something that defied description. The assassin never had time to scream. The wave hit him and sent him flying backward into the wall with enough force to crack the stone. He hit with a sickening crunch, and crumpled to the floor like a puppet with cut strings. He didn't move again. The fire faded as quickly as it had come. Seren collapsed back onto the floor, gasping for air that wouldn't come properly. Her chest felt like it had been torn apart and put back together wrong. She pressed her hand to the wound. There was blood. So much blood. But underneath, nothing. No hole, no tear, just skin. Impossible. Footsteps thundered in the corridor, voices shouting, "In here! The prince! Is that—" "Get the healers. Now!" Strong hands lifted her. She tried to speak, but her lips wouldn't form words. The last thing she saw before darkness swallowed her whole was a pair of gold eyes staring down at her with an expression she couldn't name, not disgust, not pity, something else entirely. Wonder. Opam. Dreams came in fragments. Fire. Always fire. A city burning. Screams. The smell of smoke and flesh. A woman standing in the flames, untouched, with eyes that glowed like coals. "Wake up," the woman said. "It's time." Seren tried to ask what she meant, but the dream shifted. Now she was in darkness. Complete. Absolute. And something was hunting her. She could hear it breathing, feel it circling. "You can't hide forever," a voice whispered from the void. "We know what you are. We've always known." The breathing grew closer, closer. She ran, but there was nowhere to go in the darkness. The breathing was right behind her now. She could feel hot breath on the back of her neck. "Found you." Seren woke to pain. Not the sharp, tearing agony of the blade. This was duller, deeper. Like her entire body had been wrung out, broken down, and reassembled from memory. She opened her eyes slowly, wincing at the firelight that seemed too bright. Stone ceiling, wooden beams, the smell of herbs and antiseptic, and something sweet she couldn't place. The healer's wing. She'd been here before. Once. After she'd fallen from a ladder while cleaning the high windows. She'd broken her arm in 3 places. They'd set it without anesthetic because painkillers were reserved for real wolves. She tried to sit up. Her body screamed in protest, and she fell back with a groan that sounded like it came from someone else. "Don't move." The voice came from her left, low, firm, unmistakably male. Seren turned her head slowly, carefully. A man sat in the chair beside her cot, tall even while sitting, broad-shouldered, dark hair that fell just past his jaw, pulled back with a leather tie. A face that looked like it had been carved from stone by someone who didn't believe in softness. And eyes, gold eyes that watched her with the focused intensity of a predator. Darien Kor, the Alpha King. Seren's breath caught in her throat. She'd seen him before, of course, from a distance, at ceremonies, public executions, addressing the pack from the balcony overlooking the main courtyard. He was the kind of man who commanded a room just by existing, power and control wrapped in human skin, with just enough wolf showing through to remind everyone what he really was. And he was sitting beside her bed. "You're awake," he said. Not a question, just an observation delivered in a tone that expected no response. Seren's throat was dry as sand. She swallowed, winced at how much it hurt, and managed a single word. "Why?" Darien tilted his head slightly. "Why what? Why am I—" She gestured weakly at herself, at the bandages wrapped around her torso, at the bed that was far too comfortable to be in the servants' ward, at the fact that she was breathing at all. "I should be dead." "You should be," Darien agreed without hesitation. His gaze didn't waver. "The blade went straight through your heart." The healers examined the weapon afterward. It was angled perfectly. Precise. Professional. He paused. "They said there was no way you'd survive the first minute, let alone long enough for help to arrive." "Then how—" "That," Darien said slowly, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, "is exactly what I'd like to know." Seren's pulse quickened. She remembered. Not everything, but enough. The blade punching through her chest, the cold, the darkness closing in. And then the fire, the light. The way the assassin had flown backward like he'd been hit by a charging bull. But she didn't say any of that, because if she said it, it became real. And if it became real, everything changed. Darien studied her face, reading things she didn't want him to see. "You saved my son's life." Seren blinked, thrown by the shift in topic. Talon told me what happened. You threw yourself at an armed assassin. No weapon, no training, no chance of survival. His lips twitched into something that might have been a smile on someone else. On him, it looked dangerous. That was either very brave or very stupid. Stupid, Seren said quietly. Definitely stupid. Maybe. Darian sat back, but his eyes never left hers. But it worked. Talon's alive because of you. And the assassin. He paused and something flickered across his face. Well, he didn't make it out of that room. Seren's stomach twisted. She'd killed someone. No, not her. The thing inside her had killed someone. There was a difference, wasn't there? What do you remember? Darian asked, and the question sounded casual but felt like a trap. Seren hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I remember pain, the blade, and then she stopped, looked away. Nothing, just darkness. I thought I was dead. It was a lie. Darian knew it was a lie. She could see it in the way his eyes narrowed just slightly, the way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. But he didn't call her on it. Instead, he stood, unfolding from the chair with the kind of casual grace that spoke of perfect control over every muscle. You'll stay here until the healers clear you for release, he said, moving toward the door. After that, he paused with his hand on the frame, looking back at her. We'll talk, you and I, about what happened in that room. There's nothing to... Don't. The single word cut through her protest like a knife. Don't insult me by pretending there's a rational explanation for what I saw. Seren's mouth went dry. You saw? I was 3 corridors away when the light erupted. It lit up half the east wing. Darian's expression was unreadable. So when you're ready to tell me the truth, we'll talk. He left before she could respond. The door closed with a soft click that sounded impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Seren stared at the ceiling, hands trembling beneath the blanket. Her chest felt wrong. Not painful exactly. Just different. Like something fundamental had shifted and her body hadn't caught up yet. She pressed her palm against her sternum, feeling for the wound. Nothing. Just smooth skin and the faint ridge of a scar that shouldn't exist yet. The healers had said the blade went through her heart. She should be dead. But she wasn't. And the fire. She could still feel it, coiled beneath her ribs like a sleeping serpent, waiting. For the first time in her life, Seren Vale wasn't invisible. She was seen, and that terrified her more than any blade ever could. The next 3 days passed in a haze of herb-scented air and quiet observation. Healers came and went at regular intervals. They checked her wound, which continued to heal at an impossible rate. They took her temperature, examined her eyes, listened to her heart. And they whispered, always whispered. Seren caught fragments when they thought she was sleeping. Impossible rate of recovery, no scarring. It's as if, through the heart, I saw the blade myself. Shouldn't have survived the hour, let alone something unnatural. That last word hung in the air like smoke. Unnatural. Seren kept her eyes closed and her breathing steady and listened to them debate the impossibility of her existence. On the second day, a different healer came. Older, gray-haired, with hands that shook slightly as he unwrapped her bandages. He stared at her chest for a long moment, at the pink line of the scar that was already fading. I've been a healer for 40 years, he said quietly. I've seen wolves survive things that would kill a human 10 times over. I've seen regeneration that defies logic. He looked up at her, and his eyes were full of something that looked like fear. But I've never seen anything like this. I heal fast, Seren said, keeping her voice neutral. This isn't fast, this is... He trailed off, shaking his head. What are you? Nothing. I'm nothing. Liars make poor patients. He rewrapped the bandages in silence and left without another word. That night, Seren lay awake listening to the sounds of the stronghold settling into sleep. Somewhere distant, wolves howled at the moon. Closer, she could hear guards changing shifts, their boots echoing on stone. The fire in her chest pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. She needed to understand what was happening to her. Needed to control it before it controlled her. But how did you control something you didn't understand? How did you cage a force that had saved your life by erupting from your chest like a weapon? Sleep finally claimed her in the hours before dawn, and with it came more dreams. Fire, always fire, and a voice she couldn't quite place. They're coming for you. They've always been coming. On the fourth day, visitors started arriving. Prince Talon came first. He stood in the doorway, 16 years old and clearly uncomfortable, twisting a ring on his finger. I wanted to thank you, he said without preamble, for, not dying. Seren almost smiled. You're welcome, for not dying. Talon stepped inside, moving to the foot of her bed. Up close, she could see the resemblance to his father, the same strong jaw, the same gold eyes, though his still held traces of youth. I froze, he said quietly, staring at his hands. When the assassin came, I just froze. I'm supposed to be a prince, supposed to be strong, but I couldn't even hold the dagger steady. You're 16. My father killed his first enemy at 15. Your father is terrifying. That got a small laugh out of him. Yeah, he is. Talon looked up at her. You weren't even supposed to be there. You're just, He stopped himself. Sorry, that came out wrong. A servant? Seren supplied. It's fine, it's true. No, he struggled for words. You didn't have to step in. You could have run, should have run, but you didn't. Why? Seren thought about it. About the moment she'd heard his voice calling for help. About the choice she'd made without thinking. I don't know, she said honestly. I just couldn't leave you there. Talon nodded slowly. Well, thank you. For whatever reason you did it. He pulled something from his pocket, a small silver coin stamped with the royal seal. My father said to give you this. It's a mark of favor. Means you're under royal protection. Anyone who hurts you answers to him. He placed it on the table beside her bed and headed for the door. Prince Talon? He turned back. Just Talon, please. What happened to the other assassins? Were they caught? His expression darkened. 5 got away, but we captured 2 alive. He paused. They're being questioned. Father's personally overseeing it. The way he said questioned made Seren's skin crawl. After Talon left, she picked up the coin. It was heavier than it looked, warm from his pocket, a mark of favor. In Varkesh, that meant protection. But it also meant attention. And attention was the last thing she needed. Mira came on the 5th day. She didn't knock, just walked in like she owned the place, arms crossed, face set in that familiar expression of barely concealed contempt. So, the defect's a hero now. Seren didn't respond, didn't have the energy for whatever this was going to be. Mira circled the bed slowly, like a predator sizing up prey. Funny how that works, isn't it? You spend your whole life scrubbing floors and emptying chamber pots, and then one stupid mistake makes you untouchable. It wasn't a mistake. Wasn't it? Mira leaned against the wall, studying her nails. You got lucky. Right place, right time. Threw yourself at an assassin and somehow didn't die. That's not bravery, Vale. That's just dumb luck. Seren met her gaze. Is there a point to this? The point, Mira said, pushing off the wall and moving closer, is that luck runs out, always does, and when yours does... She leaned down, close enough that Seren could smell the leather and steel on her. You'll be right back where you belong, in the dirt. Maybe. But right now, I'm here, and you're the one who had to come visit me. Something flashed in Mira's eyes. Anger, maybe. Or something darker. Enjoy it while it lasts, she said softly, because nothing lasts forever, especially not favor. She straightened and headed for the door. Oh, and Vale? That thing you did? With the assassin? People are talking, asking questions, and sooner or later they're going to want answers. She left. Seren sat in the silence, heart pounding. Mira was right about one thing. People were asking questions, and she had no good answers to give them. On the 6th day, Darian returned. This time, he wasn't alone. A woman followed him into the room, tall, slender, with silver hair that fell past her shoulders like a waterfall of moonlight. She wore robes the color of ash and smoke, and the air around her seemed to hum with something Seren couldn't name. Power, maybe. or something older. This is Alara, Darian said, closing the door behind them. She's a seer, one of the last three in the kingdom. Seren's stomach dropped like a stone. Seers didn't make social calls. They came to uncover secrets, to see what others couldn't. Alara moved closer, and Seren had the sudden, overwhelming urge to run. You're afraid, Alara said. It wasn't a question. Seren said nothing. Good, Alara continued softly. You should be. She reached out, fingertips hovering just above Seren's chest. Not touching, just sensing. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Alara's eyes went wide, then wider. Oh, she breathed. Oh, gods. Darian's posture shifted instantly. What is it? Alara pulled her hand back like she'd been burned. She stared at Seren, then at Darian, then back at Seren. Her lips moved soundlessly for a moment before words finally came. She's a phoenix. The words landed like a physical blow. Silence. Complete. Absolute. Seren's heart stopped. No, that wasn't possible. That couldn't be possible. Phoenixes were extinct. Everyone knew that. They'd been hunted down 100 years ago during the Purge. Creatures of fire and rebirth who could burn entire cities to ash and rise from their own death. They'd been too dangerous to live, too powerful to control. So the old kings had gathered armies and hunted them to extinction. Every last one. Or so the history said. You're wrong, Seren managed, voice shaking. I'm nothing. I'm defective. I can't even shift. You never shifted because you were never a wolf, Alara said, and her voice held a strange mix of awe and fear. The fire in you it's been there since birth. Dormant. Waiting. Waiting for what? Darian asked, his voice tight. Death. Alara's gaze never left Seren. Phoenixes awaken through death. It triggers the rebirth, the transformation. She gestured at Seren's chest, where the scar was already nearly invisible. The blade killed her, stopped her heart, and the fire brought her back. That's insane, Seren said, but even as she spoke, she knew it was true. She could feel it, the fire. The heat that never quite went away. The thing coiled beneath her ribs that wasn't her heartbeat, but something else entirely. Darian's expression was unreadable. He stared at Seren like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. If this is true, it is, Alara interrupted. Then we have a problem. Darian began pacing, his mind clearly working through implications. Phoenixes are illegal, have been for a century. If word spreads that one exists, let alone in the royal stronghold, civil war, Alara finished. At minimum. Some packs will want her killed immediately. Others will want to use her, control her. I can't be controlled, Seren said quietly. I can barely control myself. Both of them looked at her. That, Alara said, is the most dangerous thing you've said yet. Darian stopped pacing. What happens now? Alara folded her hands, and for a moment she looked impossibly old. That depends on what you want, Your Majesty. You could have her killed, quietly. Problem solved. Seren's breath caught. Or, Darian prompted, or you protect her. Train her. Make her an asset instead of a liability. Alara's eyes glittered. A phoenix is a weapon, Your Majesty. The question is whether it's aimed at your enemies or at you. Darian turned to Seren. She saved my son, and she's a walking inferno waiting to ignite. Then we teach her not to burn. Alara raised an eyebrow. And if she can't be taught? Then we deal with it. Darian's voice was final. But I won't kill someone for what they are. Only for what they do. Seren couldn't breathe. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell them they were wrong, that she was just a defect, that this was all some terrible mistake. But the fire in her chest pulsed, and she knew. They were right. She was a phoenix. And everything had changed. Darian moved to the door, then paused. One more thing. What? Seren's voice came out as barely a whisper. Thank you for saving Talon. And then he was gone. Alara lingered, studying Seren with those ancient eyes. You're terrified, she said. Wouldn't you be? Yes. Alara's smile was sad. But terror won't save you. Only fire will. I don't know how to use it, how to control it. Then you'd better learn fast. Elara moved toward the door, her robes whispering across the stone. Because the people who attacked this stronghold, the ones who sent those assassins? Seren's pulse spiked. What about them? Elara stopped at the threshold, looking back with eyes that saw too much. They weren't after the prince. The words hung in the air like smoke. What do you mean? The assassin who attacked Talon? He was improvising, taking a target of opportunity. Elara's expression was grave. The real target was you, Seren. It's always been you. That's impossible. Nobody knew I was... Someone did. Elara's voice was quiet, certain. Someone's known what you are since the day you were born. Why do you think you were abandoned? Why do you think you've been kept here, powerless and hidden, for 21 years? Seren's mind reeled. My parents were either trying to protect you or trying to bury you. I don't know which. Elara's hand rested on the doorframe. But someone out there knows exactly what you are, and they want you. Why? For what purpose? Phoenix fire is the most powerful force in the known world. It can create, destroy, transform. Elara's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. In the right hands, a single phoenix could bring kingdoms to their knees, or raise them from ashes. She left before Seren could form a response. The door closed. Seren sat in the sudden silence, hands trembling, mind racing. She wasn't just dangerous. She was hunted, and she didn't even know by whom or why. The fire in her chest pulsed, stronger now, like it was waking up, like it knew its secret was out. For the first time in her life, Seren Vale was seen, really seen, and she had no idea how to survive what came next. They moved her that night, not back to the servant quarters, not to anywhere she'd ever been. Instead, 4 royal guards escorted her through corridors she didn't recognize, deeper into the stronghold than she'd ever ventured. The stone here was older, darker, carved with symbols that made her skin prickle. Nobody spoke. Seren's legs were still weak from days in bed, and she stumbled twice. Neither time did the guards offer help. They just waited, silent and watchful, until she got her feet under her again. Finally, they stopped in front of a heavy wooden door bound with iron. One of the guards unlocked it and gestured inside. The room beyond was small but clean. A bed, a desk, a narrow window with bars across it that looked out over the northern mountains. A cell. They were calling it protection, but Seren knew a cage when she saw one. You'll stay here until further notice, the lead guard said. His face was impassive. Meals will be brought. You're not to leave without escort. How long? Until the king says otherwise. They left, and the lock clicked behind them. Seren stood in the center of the room, arms wrapped around herself, and tried not to think about how the walls seemed to be closing in. She moved to the window. The bars were thick, space too narrow for even a child to squeeze through. Beyond them, the mountains stretched endlessly, peaks disappearing into clouds. Beautiful and unreachable. Just like freedom. She pressed her forehead against the cold iron and closed her eyes. This was protection. This was safety. This was a cage. The first week passed in isolation. Meals arrived 3 times a day, slid through a slot in the door by faceless servants who never spoke. The food was better than what she'd eaten in the servant quarters. Actual meat, fresh bread, vegetables that hadn't started to rot, but it tasted like ash in her mouth. She had nothing to do, no work, no purpose. Just endless hours of sitting and waiting and feeling the fire in her chest pulse with restless energy. At night she dreamed, always the same dream. A city burning, screams echoing through smoke-filled streets, and a woman standing in the flames, untouched, with eyes that burned like coals. You can't hide from what you are, the woman said. The fire will out. It always does. Seren would wake gasping, sheets soaked with sweat, and wonder if she was going insane. On the 8th day, Elara came. The seer entered without knocking, carrying a leather satchel that looked older than the stronghold itself. Get up, she said without preamble. We're starting your training. Seren sat up slowly. Training for what? Control. Unless you'd prefer to immolate everyone in the stronghold the next time you get angry. I wouldn't. You will. Elara set the satchel on the desk and began unpacking. Candles, herbs, a knife with a blade that shimmered like oil on water. Phoenix fire is emotion-bound. Fear, rage, desperation. Any strong feeling can trigger it. Right now you're a bomb waiting for the wrong thought to set you off. Seren's stomach twisted. So what do I do? You learn to feel without burning. Alara lit 3 candles and arranged them in a triangle on the floor. Sit here, center. Seren moved to the indicated spot, sitting cross-legged between the candles. Alara settled across from her, eyes glittering in the candlelight. Close your eyes. Find the fire. I don't know how to... Yes, you do. You felt it every day since the awakening. Stop pretending you haven't. Seren closed her eyes. At first there was nothing, just darkness and the sound of her own breathing. Then, heat. Faint at first, like embers buried in ash. But as she focused on it, it grew stronger, warmer. The fire lived in her chest, coiled around her heart like a serpent made of light. Good. Alara's voice came from somewhere distant. Now don't fight it. Don't push it away. Just observe. Seren tried, but the moment she acknowledged the fire's presence, it surged. Heat flooded through her veins. The candles in front of her flared, flames shooting 3 feet into the air. She gasped and opened her eyes. The candles settled back to normal height, but Alara was watching her with an expression that might have been satisfaction. You felt it. I almost lost control. Almost, but you didn't. Alara leaned forward. That's the first lesson. The fire responds to your will, but will requires practice. Again. They worked for hours. Close your eyes. Find the fire. Hold it. Don't let it escape. Seren failed more than she succeeded. Twice, she accidentally scorched the floor. Once, she made all 3 candles explode in a shower of wax. But slowly, painfully, she began to understand. The fire wasn't separate from her. It was part of her. Like a limb she'd never known she had. And like any limb, it could be controlled, if she was strong enough. Enough for today, Alara finally said, extinguishing the candles with a wave of her hand. You did better than I expected. That was better? You didn't burn the room down. Yes, that's better. Alara began packing her supplies. We'll continue tomorrow, same time. Alara? Seren's voice was small. How long will this take? The training. The seer paused. Months, maybe years. Phoenix fire takes a lifetime to master, and you've only just awakened. She looked back, and her expression was almost kind. Patience, child. Rome wasn't built in a day, and you won't tame an inferno in a week. After she left, Seren lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Years. She could be locked in this room for years. The fire pulsed in her chest, restless and hungry. And for the first time since the awakening, Seren wondered if death might have been easier. On the 10th day, Talon visited again. He brought a stack of books, balancing them awkwardly as he nudged the door open with his shoulder. Thought you might be bored, he said, setting them on the desk. Father's library. I picked ones I thought were interesting. Seren stood, moving closer to examine the titles. Military Strategy, Wolfpack Dynamics, a surprisingly worn copy of romantic poetry. She raised an eyebrow at the last one. Talon flushed. That might have gotten mixed in by accident. Despite everything, Seren almost smiled. Thank you. Yeah, well, he shuffled his feet, suddenly looking every bit of 16. I also wanted to apologize. For what? For this. He gestured at the room, the bars, the locked door. Father says it's for your protection, but it looks a lot like prison from where I'm standing. It's fine. It's not. Talon met her eyes, and she saw genuine guilt there. You saved my life, and we locked you up. That's not fine. Seren sat on the edge of the bed. Your father's right, though. I'm dangerous. If I lost control, you won't. You don't know that. I do. Talon's voice was firm. I saw what you did. In my room. That assassin was about to kill both of us, and you stopped him. You didn't lose control. You saved us. That was different. I was dying. Exactly. You were dying, and you still had enough control not to hurt me. That counts for something. Seren wanted to believe him, wanted to think she wasn't a monster waiting to happen. But the fire in her chest pulsed, and she remembered Elara's words, a bomb waiting for the wrong thought. "How long is your father planning to keep me here?" she asked quietly. Talon's expression shuddered. "I don't know. He doesn't tell me everything." He paused. "But there's talk. In the court. Some of the pack leaders want you executed. They're saying you're too dangerous to live." Seren's blood ran cold. "And what does your father say?" "That you're under his protection, that anyone who touches you answers to him." Talon's jaw tightened. "But he's under pressure. The pack leaders are pushing hard, especially after what happened." "What happened?" Talon looked away. "The interrogations. Of the captured assassins. They didn't survive." "What does that mean?" "It means my father's methods aren't gentle." Talon's voice was strained. "They told him what he wanted to know before they died. Who sent them? Why they came." Seren's pulse quickened. And I don't know. Father won't tell me." Talon moved toward the door, then stopped. "But whatever they said, it scared him. I've never seen him scared before, but after those interrogations," he trailed off. "Just be careful, Seren. I don't think the danger's over." He left, and the lock clicked behind him. Seren sat alone with the books and the fire, and the growing certainty that something much worse than assassination attempts was coming. The whispers started on the 12th day. She couldn't hear them directly, but she knew they were happening. Guards talked in low voices outside her door. Servants who brought meals wouldn't meet her eyes. And then Mira came. She arrived with 2 other guards, all of them in full armor, weapons drawn. "On your feet," Mira said. Seren stood slowly. "What's happening?" "The king wants to see you, now." They escorted her through the stronghold, and this time Seren noticed the stairs. Servants pressed themselves against walls as she passed. Guards watched with hands on hilts. Fear. She could smell it on them. Fear of her. They brought her to the throne room, a massive chamber with vaulted ceilings and pillars carved to look like ancient trees. At the far end, on a throne of black stone, sat Darien Kor. But he wasn't alone. The room was filled with wolves. Pack leaders, she realized. The most powerful alphas in Varkesh, gathered in a semicircle before the throne, all of them staring at her. Mira shoved her forward. "Move!" Seren walked the length of the room, every eye tracking her movement. The fire in her chest pulsed, sensing danger, wanting to rise. She forced it down. When she reached the throne, she dropped to one knee, not because she wanted to, because survival required it. "Stand," Darien said. She stood. He looked different here. Not the man who'd sat by her bedside, but the king. Cold. Remote. Carved from ice and iron. "Seren Vale," he said, and his voice carried through the chamber. "You stand accused of being a phoenix, of harboring illegal magic, of posing a threat to the kingdom of Varkesh." Her stomach dropped. "How do you answer these charges?" The room held its breath. Seren could lie, could deny it, could try to save herself. But what was the point? They already knew. "I am what I am," she said quietly. "I didn't choose it." Murmurs rippled through the assembled wolves. "She admits it," someone said. "A phoenix in our midst. Kill her now before she burns us all." "Silence!" Darien's voice cut through the noise like a blade. The room fell quiet. He leaned forward, eyes locked on Seren. "Do you know why phoenixes were hunted to extinction? Because we were dangerous. Because you were weapons." Darien stood, descending from the throne. 100 years ago, phoenix fire burned 3 kingdoms to ash. Millions died. The land itself was scorched beyond recovery. He circled her slowly. "We hunted your kind because allowing even one to live meant risking another catastrophe." "I'm not them." "Aren't you?" He stopped in front of her. "You've already killed once. What's to stop you from killing again?" "He was an assassin. He was trying to murder your son. And if someone insults you, threatens you, makes you angry?" Darien's eyes burned into hers. "What happens then?" Seren had no answer, because she didn't know. A tall man with gray streaking his hair stepped forward. "Your Majesty, with respect, this is madness. Phoenix law is clear. They must be destroyed on sight." Lord Blackwood makes a fair point, another pack leader added. We cannot allow sentiment to override centuries of wisdom. Sentiment? Darian's voice was dangerously soft. Is that what you think this is? What else would you call it? Blackwood gestured at Seren. She's a servant, a nothing. Yet you've given her protection, resources, training. Why? Because she saved Prince Talon? That debt is paid. Kill her and be done with it. I'll not execute someone for what they are. Then you're a fool. Blackwood's tone was cutting. Phoenix Fire doesn't discriminate, Your Majesty. When she loses control, and she will, it won't matter that you showed her mercy. We'll all burn the same. Darian's jaw tightened. Are you questioning my judgment? I'm questioning your sanity. Blackwood looked around at the other pack leaders. We all are. This thing is a threat to everything we've built, to our families, our children. You want to keep a bomb in the heart of the stronghold because you feel guilty about how she was treated? That's not leadership. That's suicide. Several heads nodded in agreement. Seren's hands clenched into fists. The fire stirred, responding to her rising anger. Not helping, she thought desperately. Stay down. Lord Blackwood, Darian said, each word precise and controlled. You forget yourself. Do I? Or am I the only one brave enough to say what we're all thinking? Blackwood turned to the assembled wolves. How many of you would sleep soundly knowing a phoenix lives above you? How many of you trust this odd creature not to incinerate your children the first time she has a nightmare? Silence. Then one pack leader raised his hand, then another. Within moments, more than half the room had signaled agreement. Darian's expression didn't change, but Seren saw something flicker in his eyes. Calculation. He was outnumbered. A vote, then, Blackwood said, smiling coldly. Let the council decide. Should the phoenix live or die? This isn't a democracy, Darian said. No, it's a monarchy built on the consent of the governed. Blackwood's smile widened. And right now, Your Majesty, your governed are terrified. Vote or risk losing their loyalty entirely. Seren felt the room shift. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about power, about pack leaders testing how far they could push their king. And she was the excuse. Darian looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned back to the assembly. Very well. A vote. Those in favor of execution? Hands rose. Seren counted them. 14 out of 23. More than half. Those opposed? 9 hands. Darian didn't raise his own hand. The council has spoken, Blackwood said. Execute the phoenix. No, Darian said quietly. The room erupted. You can't ignore a council vote. This is tyranny. You'll tear the kingdom apart over a servant? Darian waited for the noise to die down. When he spoke again, his voice was cold enough to freeze blood. I am Alpha King of Varkesh. My word is law. The council advises. I decide. He looked at each pack leader in turn. And I have decided that Seren Vale will live. Under my protection. In my custody. Anyone who challenges this challenges me directly. And we all know how those challenges end. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Blackwood's face went red. This is a mistake. Perhaps. But it's my mistake to make. Then on your head be it. Blackwood turned and stalked toward the exit. When she burns us all, remember that we tried to stop you. Half the pack leaders followed him out. The others remained, but their expressions ranged from worried to openly hostile. Darian dismissed them with a wave. When the room was empty except for guards, he turned back to Seren. She was shaking. The fire in her chest roared, begging to be released. Breathe, Darian said quietly. They want me dead. Yes. You just made yourself a target to save me. Why? Darian studied her for a long moment. Because killing you would be easy. Teaching you to control your power? That's hard. And I didn't become king by taking the easy path. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. He gestured to Mira. Take her back to her room. Double the guard. As Mira grabbed her arm, Seren looked back at the king. They'll come for me, she said. Blackwood and the others. They won't stop. I know. So what happens when they do? Darian's smile was sharp and dangerous. Then we find out just how hot a phoenix can burn. They came for her 3 nights later. Seren woke to the sound of her door opening, not the lock clicking. The door simply opened, hinges silent. She sat up, heart pounding. 3 figures stood in the doorway, masked, armed, not guards, assassins. "Don't scream," one of them said. "We'll make it quick." Seren's mind raced. The fire surged in her chest, ready, eager. But if she used it, she'd prove Blackwood right. Prove that she was a monster who couldn't control herself. "Please," she said, backing toward the window. "Don't do this." "Nothing personal." The lead assassin drew a blade. "Just business." They advanced. Seren's back hit the wall. The bars of the window dug into her spine. The fire screamed to be released. "Hold it!" she thought desperately. "Hold it! Hold it! Hold it!" The assassin lunged, and Seren's control shattered. Fire erupted from her in a wave of white gold fury. It hit the assassins like a physical force, sending them flying backward into the corridor. But she didn't stop there. The fire kept coming, pouring out of her in an unstoppable flood. It consumed the doorway, the walls, the ceiling. Wood charred, stone cracked. The air itself seemed to burn. Seren screamed, trying to pull it back, but it wouldn't listen. The fire had tasted freedom, and it wanted more. Alarms rang throughout the stronghold. Voices shouted. Boots pounded on stone. And still the fire burned, until hands grabbed her shoulders. Strong hands, familiar hands. "Seren, look at me!" She turned. Darian stood in the inferno, completely unafraid, eyes locked on hers. "Breathe," he said. "Pull it back, now." "I can't." "You can. I've seen you do it. Focus. Pull it back." Seren closed her eyes, found the fire. It fought her, wild and raging, but she was stronger. Had to be stronger. Slowly, painfully, she drew it back into her chest, back into the place where it lived. The flames died. Smoke cleared. Seren collapsed, and Darian caught her. The corridor was destroyed, walls blackened, floor scorched. The 3 assassins lay unconscious, clothes singed but alive. "I'm sorry," Seren gasped. "I tried to hold it." "You did." Darian's voice was quiet. "They're alive. You could have killed them, should have killed them, but you pulled back." Guards poured into the corridor, weapons drawn. Darian didn't let go of Seren. "Arrest these 3. I want to know who sent them." "Your Majesty," Mira said, staring at the destruction. "The council will hear about this. They'll say—" "I know what they'll say." Darian looked down at Seren. "And they'll be right. We can't keep her here anymore. It's not safe, for her or for anyone else." "So what do we do?" Mira asked. Darian's expression hardened with decision. "We stop hiding. Tomorrow we announce what she is. And we make it very clear that anyone who comes for her comes through me first." Seren stared at him. "That's insane. You'll start a war." "War's already started," Darian said grimly. "We just stopped pretending it hasn't." He lifted her easily, carrying her through the scorched corridor while guards scrambled to secure the area. And as Seren looked back at the destruction she'd caused, one thought echoed through her mind. Blackwood was right. She was a monster, and the fire was only getting stronger. Blackwood was right. She was a monster, and the fire was only getting stronger. Darian carried her through corridors that reeked of smoke and fear, guards scrambling out of his way. Servants pressed themselves against walls, eyes wide with terror. Not of the assassins, of her. She could feel their stares like brands on her skin. "Put me down," Seren said quietly. "Not yet." "I can walk." "I know." But he didn't release her until they reached a different room, larger than her cell, with windows that actually opened and furniture that looked like it belonged to someone who mattered. He set her on a chair near the fireplace and stepped back, studying her with those gold eyes that missed nothing. "You pulled it back," he said finally. "That matters. I destroyed an entire corridor. You could have destroyed the entire wing." Darian moved to a cabinet and poured 2 glasses of something amber. He handed her one. "You held back. That's progress." Seren stared at the liquid. "What is this?" "Whiskey. Drink it." She did. It burned going down, but not like fire. Like warmth. Like something human. Darian drained his own glass and poured another. "The assassins will talk. And when they do, we'll know who sent them." "Blackwood." "Probably, but I need a proof before I can move against a pack leader." He set the glass down with more force than necessary. "Tomorrow, we make the announcement. You, me, and the entire court. We control the narrative before Blackwood does. And what narrative is that? That you're protecting a weapon? That you're under my command? Darian's voice was hard. That your fire belongs to the crown? That anyone who attacks you attacks Varkesh itself? Seren's stomach twisted. You're making me a symbol. I'm making you untouchable. There's a difference. Is there? She met his gaze. Or are you just putting a prettier cage around me? Something flickered across his face. Anger, maybe, or respect. Get some sleep, he said, moving toward the door. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. Darian. He stopped, hand on the frame. Why are you doing this? Really? He was silent for a long moment, then, because I'm tired of killing what I don't understand. And because he trailed off. Get some sleep, Seren. The door closed behind him. Seren sat alone in the firelight, the whiskey burning in her stomach and the fire burning in her chest, and wondered which one would destroy her first. They came for her at dawn. Not assassins this time. Servants bearing clothes, real clothes, not the threadbare rags she'd worn her entire life. A dress of deep crimson with black embroidery that looked like flames, boots that actually fit, a cloak lined with fur. His Majesty's orders, one of the servants said, refusing to meet Seren's eyes. You're to be presentable. Presentable, like she was going to a party instead of her own execution. Because that's what this felt like. A formal announcement might sound civilized, but Seren knew better. She was being paraded in front of the court so they could decide whether to worship her or kill her. Probably both. The servants dressed her in silence, their hands quick and professional. One of them tried to do something with her hair, gave up, and settled for pulling it back with a silver clasp. When they finished, Seren barely recognized herself in the mirror. She looked like someone who mattered. It was terrifying. Mira arrived next, flanked by 4 guards. Time to go. The walk through the stronghold was different this time. Word had spread. Servants lined the corridors, silent and staring. Some looked curious. Most looked afraid. One old woman made a warding sign as Seren passed. Protection against evil. Seren kept her eyes forward and her expression blank. The throne room was already packed when they arrived. Every pack leader, every noble, even servants crowded near the back, standing on tiptoes to see. The noise died the moment Seren entered. Hundreds of eyes turned toward her. Hundreds of wolves who wanted her dead. Mira shoved her forward. Walk! Seren walked. Each step echoed in the sudden silence. The dress was heavier than she'd expected, the fabric dragging slightly. She focused on that. On the physical sensation. On anything except the stairs. Darian sat on his throne, watching her approach with an expression carved from stone. Beside him stood Talon, looking uncomfortable in formal armor. And behind them both, Alara. The seer's silver hair seemed to glow in the morning light streaming through the high windows. Seren stopped at the base of the throne and dropped to one knee. Rise, Darian said. She stood. He rose from the throne, and the room somehow got quieter. 3 nights ago, Darian began, his voice carrying through the chamber. This stronghold was attacked. Assassins breached our walls. My son nearly died. Would have died, if not for the woman standing before you. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Seren Vale killed one assassin and saved Prince Talon's life at the cost of her own. She should have died. By all rights, she did die. The blade pierced her heart. He paused, letting that sink in. Yet she stands here today. Alive, healed, because Seren Vale is not what we believed her to be. Blackwood's voice cut through the silence. Say it plainly, Your Majesty. What is she? Darian's gaze swept across the assembled wolves. She is Phoenix. The room exploded. Shouts, curses. Someone screamed. Guards moved forward, hands on weapons, trying to maintain order. Illegal magic. Abomination. Kill it before it kills us all. Silence! Darian's roar shook the rafters. The noise died instantly. I am not finished. He stepped down from the dais, moving to stand beside Seren, close enough that anyone attacking her would have to go through him first. The message was clear. Phoenix law was written 100 years ago, Darian continued, in response to a catastrophe that is not this woman's fault. She did not choose what she is, did not ask for this power. She was born defective, or so we thought, and spent 21 years serving this stronghold without complaint. And now she's a weapon, Blackwood said coldly. A weapon that will turn on us the moment she loses control. We've already seen it. She destroyed an entire corridor last night. Defending herself against assassins, Darian countered. Assassins who entered her locked room. Who do you think sent them, Lord Blackwood? Blackwood's face went red. Are you accusing me? I'm stating facts. 3 assassins. Professional. They knew exactly where to find her, knew the guard rotations, knew which locks would be conveniently left open. Darian's smile was dangerous. Someone with insider knowledge sent them. And when we find out who, they'll answer for treason. The threat hung in the air. Blackwood's hand moved toward his sword. Every guard in the room tensed. Careful, Darian said softly. That would be unwise. Blackwood's hand stopped, but his eyes burned with hatred. This isn't over. No, it's not. Darian turned back to the assembly, which is why I'm making this decree. Seren Vale is now a ward of the crown. She will be trained, controlled, and utilized as a weapon in defense of Varkesh. Anyone who harms her will be executed for treason. Anyone who aids her enemies will share their fate. You're condemning us all, someone shouted from the back. I'm protecting us all, Darian shot back. A phoenix bound to the crown is an asset. A phoenix driven into the arms of our enemies is a catastrophe. Which would you prefer? Silence. No one had an answer for that. The decision is made, Darian said with finality. Seren Vale lives, under my protection, by my command. This matter is closed. He gestured, and Mira stepped forward to escort Seren out, but Blackwood's voice stopped them. A demonstration. Darian turned. What? If she's truly controlled, if she's truly an asset and not a threat, then let her prove it. Blackwood smiled coldly. A demonstration of her power, right here, right now. Show us she can be trusted not to burn us all in our sleep. The crowd murmured agreement. Seren's pulse spiked. That's not an excellent idea, Darian said smoothly. Seren, show them. She stared at him. Show them what? Your fire. Controlled. Precise. His eyes locked onto hers, and she saw the challenge there. The test. Prove you're not a threat. Seren's hands trembled. I've only been training for 2 weeks. Then this should be easy. He was backing her into a corner, forcing her to either demonstrate control she didn't fully have or confirm every fear the court held. There was no good choice. She looked at Alara. The seer gave the smallest nod. Do it. Seren closed her eyes and found the fire. It leaped at her touch, eager and hungry. She imagined it as a rope, pulling hand over hand, drawing just a thread of it upward. She opened her eyes and raised her right hand. Flame bloomed in her palm, small, controlled, no bigger than a candle's flame. The crowd gasped. Seren focused. The flame grew, spreading across her fingers like living jewelry, still controlled, still contained. More, Darian said quietly. She pulled more fire. It crawled up her arm, wreathing her forearm in white gold light that didn't burn the fabric of her dress. Whispers filled the chamber. Enough, Blackwood said. We've seen. I wasn't talking to you. Darian never took his eyes off Seren. Show them everything. Seren understood. Half measures wouldn't convince anyone. They needed to see the full extent of what she was and see her control it. She took a deep breath and released the fire. It erupted from her in a column of light that shot toward the vaulted ceiling. The crowd screamed and scattered, but Seren held it, shaped it. The fire twisted and coiled like a living serpent, never touching anyone, never spreading beyond her control. She could feel the heat, the power, the sheer destructive force she was holding in check, and it was exhilarating. For the first time since the awakening, she wasn't afraid of what she was. She was in control. She pulled the fire back slowly, carefully, until it was once again just a flame in her palm. Then she closed her fist, and it disappeared. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Then Talon started clapping. It was hesitant at first, just him, but then others joined. A few at first, then more, until half the room was applauding. The other half looked like they wanted to run. Blackwood's expression was murderous. Parlor tricks. It proves nothing. It proves she has more control than you have sense, Darian said. The demonstration is complete. Everyone out. Court is dismissed. The crowd dispersed slowly, still murmuring. Some cast glances at Seren, awe, fear, calculation. She'd just painted a target on her back larger than anything Blackwood could have managed. When the room was finally empty except for Darian, Alara, Talin, and the guards, Seren's legs gave out. She caught herself on a pillar, breathing hard. That, Alara said, appearing at her side, was impressive and stupid. You used far more power than necessary. It's what he asked for. No, he asked for a demonstration. You gave them a declaration of war. The seer's eyes were grave. Every power-hungry wolf in that room just started making plans to either control you or kill you, probably both. Darian approached, and for once he looked almost approving. You did well. I terrified them. Good. Fear is useful. He glanced at Alara. How long before she's fully trained? Years, decades, possibly. Phoenix fire isn't something you master in a season. We don't have decades. Darian's jaw tightened. The interrogations revealed something. The assassins weren't working for Blackwood. Seren's stomach dropped. Then who? An organization called the Flamekeepers. Ever heard of them? Both Seren and Alara shook their heads. Neither had I, Darian said grimly. But according to our guests, they've been around for centuries, operating in secret, and they've been searching for phoenixes since the Purge. Why? Seren asked. That's what I'd like to know. Darian moved to the window, staring out at the mountains. They didn't want to kill you. They wanted to take you. The attack on Talin was a diversion. The real target was always you. Alara's expression darkened. How many operatives do they have? Unknown. Could be dozens. Could be thousands. Darian turned back. But they're organized, well-funded, and they have contacts inside my stronghold. The locks, Seren said, understanding. Someone let the second group in. Yes, which means we have a traitor. Darian's eyes were cold. And until we find them, no one is safe, especially you. Ulrab. They moved her again that night, this time to a tower room at the highest point of the stronghold. Windows on all sides. Only one entrance, heavily guarded, a cage with a view. Seren stood at the western window, watching the sun set over the mountains, and tried not to think about how trapped she felt. A knock at the door. Come in. Talin entered carrying a tray of food. Thought you might be hungry. The servants are too scared to bring it themselves. Seren almost smiled. Thanks. He set the tray down and lingered awkwardly. That thing you did. In the throne room. That was incredible. It was terrifying. Yeah, that too. Talin moved to the window beside her. For what it's worth, I don't think you're a monster. Half the court does. Half the court are idiots. He paused. My father believes in you. He doesn't show it, but he does. He wouldn't risk this much for someone he didn't think was worth saving. Seren looked at him, 16 years old and already wiser than most adults she'd met. What do you believe? I believe you saved my life when you didn't have to. I believe you're trying to control something that would terrify anyone. And I believe, he hesitated, I believe you're going to change everything, one way or another. Before she could respond, shouts echoed from below. Then screams. Talin's head snapped toward the door. What? The door burst open. A guard stumbled in, blood pouring from a wound in his side. Attack! They're in the... An arrow took him in the throat. He collapsed. Behind him, figures in black poured into the room. Not 3 this time. 12. Talin drew his sword, stepping in front of Seren. Get back! The attackers moved with professional precision, spreading out, cutting off escape routes. One of them stepped forward, pulling down his mask. Seren's blood froze. She knew that face. Corvin, the guard who'd stood with Mira that first day, who'd mocked her in the corridor. Traitor, Talin spat. Corvin smiled. Realist. The king's backing the wrong side, boy. We're here to correct that mistake. You'll have to go through me. We were planning on it. They attacked. Talin fought like someone who'd actually paid attention in training. His blade moved in clean, efficient arcs, holding them back. But he was 1 against 12. Seren felt the fire rising, begging to be released. Not yet, she thought. Too many. Too close. She'd kill Talin along with them. An attacker slipped past Talin's guard and lunged at Seren. She dodged, barely. his blade slicing through her sleeve instead of her arm. "Hold her!" Corvin shouted. "We need her alive." Two more rushed her. Seren's control shattered. Fire exploded from her, but this time she didn't try to aim it, didn't try to control it, she just let it go. The room became an inferno. Attackers screamed, burning, fleeing. Corvin hit the floor, rolling to extinguish flames. But Talon was right there. In the fire, she tried to pull it back, tried to shield him, but the flames moved too fast. He screamed, and Seren's heart stopped. No, 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 no. She yanked the fire back with everything she had, drawing it into herself so fast it felt like swallowing glass. The flames died. Talon collapsed, clutching his arm. His sleeve was burned away, skin beneath angry and blistered. But alive. He was alive. Seren dropped to her knees beside him. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean—" "I know." His voice was tight with pain. "Not your fault." The door burst open again. Darien entered like a storm, sword drawn, guards behind him. He took in the scene instantly. The bodies, the burn marks, his son on the floor. His eyes found Seren. And for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something that looked like fear. What happened? "She saved me," Talon said before Seren could speak. "Again, they would have taken her if she hadn't—" He winced. "It's just a burn, Father. I'm fine." Darien's gaze moved to the bodies, to Corvin, who was still breathing but badly burned. "Traitor," Darien said softly. Then louder. "Get the prince to the healers, now, and someone restrain that one. I want him kept alive." Guards moved to obey. Darien approached Seren slowly. She was still on her knees, hands shaking, blood on her dress from the guard who died in the doorway. "I hurt him," she whispered. "I hurt Talon." "You saved him. There's a difference." "I can't control it. Not when they come at me like that. I can't—" Her voice broke. "Blackwood was right. I'm too dangerous. You should have let them execute me." Darien crouched down to her level. "Look at me." She couldn't. He caught her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You're not a monster. You're a weapon that hasn't learned how to aim yet. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." His grip tightened. "And I'm going to teach you the difference, but first, we need to leave." "Leave?" "The stronghold is compromised. Corvin wasn't working alone. The Flamekeepers have infiltrated my guard, my staff, possibly my council. We can't trust anyone here." "So what do we do?" Darien stood, pulling her to her feet. "We go somewhere they can't follow. Somewhere you can train without worrying about assassins in the night." "Where?" His smile was grim. "The one place no sane wolf would ever go. The Ashen Wastes." Alara appeared in the doorway, breathing hard. "Your Majesty, we have a problem." "Another one?" "The Flamekeepers just attacked the western gate. It's a distraction. They're trying to breach the vault." Darien's expression went dark. "The artifacts. If they get their hands on the binding chains, they won't." Darien turned to Mira, who'd arrived with reinforcements. "Secure the vault. No one gets in or out. Kill anyone who tries." Mira saluted and ran. Darien looked back at Seren's. "We're leaving. Tonight. Pack light." "I don't have anything to pack." "Then we leave now." He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the door. They made it 3 steps before the entire stronghold shook. Not from fire, from something else. Something worse. The windows shattered inward, and Seren threw up her arms to shield her face from the glass. When she looked up, her blood turned to ice. A figure stood in the broken window, tall, wrapped in robes that seemed to be made of smoke, eyes that glowed like embers, and when it spoke, its voice was 1,000 voices layered over each other. "The Phoenix comes with us. Surrender her, or we burn this place to ash." Darien stepped in front of Seren, sword raised. "Over my dead body." The figure tilted its head. "That can be arranged." It raised one hand, and fire erupted from its palm. Not Seren's white gold fire. This was crimson, dark, wrong. It hit Darien like a hammer, sending him flying backward into the wall. He didn't get up. "No!" Seren screamed. The figure turned to her. "Come willingly, or watch everyone in this stronghold die. Your choice, Phoenix." Seren looked at Darien's unconscious form. at the guards who were already dying from the dark fire spreading across the floor, at Talon, who'd been dragged to safety but whose arm she'd burned. Everyone she touched got hurt. Everyone she tried to protect ended up bleeding. Maybe it was time to stop fighting. The figure extended a hand. Well? Seren took a step forward, then another. Seren, don't! Alara's voice, desperate. But Seren kept walking. She reached the figure and took its hand. The dark fire wrapped around her like chains. And the last thing she saw before everything went black was Darian's eyes opening, gold and furious, and filled with something that looked like grief. Then the world disappeared, and Seren fell into darkness. When consciousness returned, it came with pain. Not the clean pain of injury. Something deeper, like her bones had been replaced with molten iron and her blood with acid. Seren opened her eyes to darkness so complete she couldn't tell if she was blind. Then a voice cut through the void. She's awake. Inform the keeper. Footsteps receded. A door opened and closed, letting in a brief slash of red light before darkness swallowed everything again. Seren tried to move and discovered she couldn't. Her wrists were bound above her head, chains digging into skin. Her feet barely touched the ground. She pulled against the restraints. The chains didn't budge, but they burned where they touched her, not with heat, but with cold that ate through to the bone. Phoenix binding chains, the artifacts Alara had mentioned, forged 100 years ago specifically to neutralize creatures like her. She tried to summon the fire. Nothing happened. The chains had smothered it completely. She could feel it still there, coiled in her chest, but distant, unreachable. For the first time since the awakening, she was powerless. The door opened again. Red light flooded the room, and Seren squeezed her eyes shut against the sudden brightness. When she opened them, 3 figures stood before her. The one in the center wore the same smoke-like robes from the stronghold. Up close, she could see they weren't robes at all. They were flames, dark and crimson, held in the shape of fabric by will alone. The figure lowered its hood. Seren's breath caught. A woman, maybe 40, with hair like spun copper and eyes that burned with the same crimson fire as her robes. Beautiful in a way that made Seren think of funeral pyres. "My name is Cassia," the woman said. Her voice was normal now. No layered echoes, just cold precision. "Welcome to the sanctum." "Where am I?" "Somewhere your king will never find you." Cassia stepped closer, studying Seren like a specimen under glass. "The Ashen Wastes, 300 miles from Varkesh, in a place that was old when the first wolves learned to shift. The Ashen Wastes, the place Darian had planned to take her. The irony was bitter. Why bring me here?" "Because you're the answer we've been searching for." Cassia reached out, fingers hovering just above Seren's chest. "The last phoenix. The final piece." "Final piece of what?" Cassia smiled. "Rebirth." She turned and gestured. The 2 figures behind her moved forward, pulling a heavy object between them. A mirror. But not a normal mirror. The surface rippled like water, and the reflection showed not this dark room but somewhere else entirely. A city. Vast and gleaming. Towers of white stone reaching toward a sky so blue it hurt to look at. And everywhere, fire. Not destroying. Creating. Fire that lit the streets without burning. Fire that flowed like rivers through channels carved in the stone. Fire that danced in fountains and spiraled up the towers like living vines. It was beautiful. "This was Pyroth," Cassia said softly. "The Phoenix City, home to thousands of our kind, before the wolves hunted us to extinction." "Our kind." Seren stared at her. "You're a phoenix, one of 12 survivors, hidden, scattered across the world, waiting." Cassia's eyes glowed brighter. "We've spent a century gathering power, learning, planning, and now, finally, we have what we need to bring Pyroth back." "I don't understand." "Phoenix fire isn't just destruction, child. It's transformation, creation. With enough power concentrated correctly, we can rebuild what was lost. Resurrect the dead city. Restore our people." Seren's mind raced. The attack on the stronghold. The assassins. All of it was to get me here? "You're the youngest phoenix born in 100 years. Your fire is pure. uncontaminated by rage or grief or the weight of watching your entire race burn. Cassia moved closer, and Seren could smell smoke on her. You're the catalyst, the spark that ignites the resurrection. And if I refuse? Cassia's smile was sad. You won't, because refusing means we use your fire anyway. It'll just hurt more. She nodded to the two figures. They approached with something that looked like a crown made of the same crimson fire as Cassia's robes. Seren thrashed against the chains. Don't! They placed the crown on her head. Pain exploded through her skull. Not physical pain. Something worse. Like her mind was being torn apart and reassembled wrong. She screamed. Images flooded her vision. Memories that weren't hers. A city burning, children crying, wolves tearing through the streets, slaughtering everything that moved. A woman, Cassia, younger, terrified, hiding in a cellar while her family died above. 100 years of grief, of rage, of planning revenge. Stop! Seren gasped. Please stop! The crown lifted. The visions faded. Seren hung limp in the chains, breathing hard, tears streaming down her face. That, Cassia said quietly, was mercy. A glimpse of what's coming. The crown will extract your fire piece by piece until there's nothing left but ash, unless you give it willingly. Why would I help you? Because the alternative is worse. Cassia's expression hardened. We're bringing Pyroth back either way. With your cooperation, you survive. Without it? She shrugged. Well, Phoenix fire burns brightest at the moment of death. She turned toward the door. Wait, Seren said. Cassia paused. The wolves. The ones who destroyed Pyroth. They're all dead now, aren't they? It's been 100 years. Yes. So who are you really doing this for? The dead? Or yourself? Cassia's jaw tightened. Resurrection isn't revenge. Isn't it? You want to bring back a city that'll be filled with people who remember being slaughtered, who will want blood. You're not building a home, you're building an army. And the wolves will deserve everything that's coming. Cassia's voice was ice. They hunted us like animals, killed our children, burned our cities. You think they've changed? You think that king of yours wouldn't execute you the moment you became inconvenient? He had the chance. He didn't take it. Because you're useful. The moment that changes, he protected me in front of his entire court, made me untouchable, risked civil war for someone he'd known for 2 weeks. Seren met Cassia's burning gaze. Not all wolves are your enemy. All wolves are someone's enemy. Cassia moved to the door. You have until dawn to decide. Cooperate or burn. Your choice. The door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed the room again. Seren hung in the chains and tried not to think about how much time she had left. Hours, maybe. Not enough. Bo? Time passed in a haze of darkness and cold. Seren drifted in and out of consciousness, the chains draining her strength along with her fire. She dreamed of Darien, of his eyes opening just as she was taken, of the fury and grief she'd seen there. Would he come for her? Could he even find this place? The ashen wastes were supposedly impassable, a dead zone where nothing grew and no one survived. The perfect place to hide. The perfect place to die. A sound pulled her back to awareness, scratching, faint, coming from somewhere above. Seren looked up, squinting into the darkness. The scratching continued. Then a crack appeared in the ceiling, a hairline fracture that spread like roots through stone. Something was breaking in. The ceiling exploded inward. Seren threw herself sideways as debris rained down. The chains yanked her back, and she hit the wall hard enough to see stars. When her vision cleared, a figure dropped through the hole, small, compact, moving with predatory grace. Mira. The wolf landed in a crouch, eyes glowing gold in the darkness. She took in Seren's condition with a single glance. Well, you look like hell. How? Talk later. Move now. Mira pulled a vial from her belt and poured the contents on the chains. They hissed and smoked, the metal corroding rapidly. Phoenix acid. The only thing that could dissolve Phoenix-binding chains. Where did you get that? Seren gasped. Elara. She's full of useful surprises. The chains fell away, and Seren collapsed. Mira caught her. Can you walk?
I can barely stand. Good enough. Mira hauled her upright. We've got maybe 3 minutes before they realize you're gone. Move. She pulled Seren toward the hole in the ceiling. A rope dangled down, swaying slightly. You first, Mira said. I can't climb that. Then I'll push. Mira grabbed Seren's waist and practically threw her at the rope.
Seren's hands closed around it on instinct. The rough fiber bit into her palms, but she held on. She climbed. Her arms screamed, her legs shook. Every muscle felt like it was tearing, but she climbed. Mira followed below, boosting her when she faltered. They emerged into a corridor carved from black stone. The air was hot and smelled of sulfur. This way. Mira took the lead, moving fast and silent. Seren stumbled after her, legs barely cooperating. Shouts echoed behind them. Someone had discovered the empty cell. Faster, Mira hissed. They rounded a corner and nearly ran into a guard. Mira moved before Seren could blink. A knife appeared in her hand, flashing once. The guard went down without a sound. Keep moving. More corridors, more turns. The sanctum was a maze of black stone and red torchlight. They emerged into a larger chamber. At the far end, a doorway opened onto darkness. Freedom. Almost there, Mira said. A wall of crimson fire erupted between them and the exit. Cassia stepped through the flames, and she wasn't alone. 6 other phoenixes flanked her, all of them burning with that same dark fire. Impressive, Cassia said, eyes on Mira. A wolf, this deep in the sanctum. I'm almost impressed. Let us pass, Mira said. Her voice was steady, but Seren could see the tension in her shoulders. 1 wolf against 7 phoenixes. They were going to die here. The wolf can leave, Cassia said. The phoenix stays. Not happening. Then you die. Cassia raised her hand, fire coiling around her fingers. Mira shifted. One moment, she was human. The next, a massive gray wolf stood in her place, teeth bared, hackles raised. The phoenixes attacked. Fire erupted from all sides. Mira dodged, impossibly fast, using her smaller size against them. But there were too many. A blast of fire caught her flank. She yelped and went down, fur smoldering. No! Seren screamed. The fire in her chest surged, responding to her desperation. The chains were gone. Nothing was suppressing it anymore. Seren didn't think, didn't plan. She just released everything. White gold fire exploded from her in a wave so bright it turned the darkness to noon. It hit the crimson fire and consumed it, burning through the dark flames like they were paper. The phoenixes scattered, shielding their eyes. Seren grabbed Mira's fur and pulled. The wolf was heavy, unconscious, but Seren found strength she didn't know she had. She dragged Mira toward the exit. The fire kept coming, pouring out of her in an endless flood. She couldn't stop it, didn't know how. But for once, she didn't need to. The sanctum itself was burning. Stone cracked, walls collapsed. The entire structure groaned like a dying beast. Seren made it through the doorway into cold night air. Behind her, the sanctum imploded, fire consuming everything. She collapsed in the ash, still holding onto Mira's fur, and watched the building burn. Bob. When Mira shifted back to human form, she was covered in burns and barely breathing. That, she gasped, was spectacular. Also stupid. You came back for me. Yeah, well, Mira coughed and blood flecked her lips. King's orders. Also, you're less annoying than I thought. Is that a compliment? Don't push it. Footsteps crunched in the ash. Seren looked up to see Darien emerging from the darkness, a dozen guards behind him. His face was a mask of controlled fury, but when his eyes found her, something cracked. He crossed the distance in 3 strides and dropped to his knees beside her. You're alive. Disappointed? Furious. But his hands were gentle as he checked her for injuries. You gave yourself up, walked right into their hands. They would have killed everyone in the stronghold, so you sacrificed yourself instead. His jaw tightened. That was stupid. Mira said the same thing. Because it's true. He looked at the burning ruins of the sanctum. What happened? I burned it down. I can see that. His eyes met hers. How? I stopped holding back. Seren's voice was quiet. I stopped being afraid of what I was. And I just let go. Darien was silent for a moment, then,
The other phoenixes? Dead. Maybe. I don't know. Seren looked at the flames. Cassia wanted to resurrect Pyroth, the Phoenix City. She was going to use my fire to bring it back. And you stopped her. I destroyed everything instead. Seren's hands shook. I killed them, all of them. Just like the wolves killed their people 100 years ago. I'm exactly what they feared. No. Darian's voice was firm. You're exactly what they needed. Someone strong enough to stop them. By becoming a monster. By surviving. He stood, pulling her up with him. Monsters don't feel guilt. Don't question their actions. You're not a monster, Seren. You're just powerful. There's a difference. Healers rushed forward to tend to Mira. Seren watched them work, her mind still reeling. She'd killed people. Not in self-defense, not by accident. She'd made a choice and followed through. The fire had listened to her, obeyed her. For the first time, she'd been in complete control. And it terrified her how good that felt. Alara approached, silver hair glowing in the firelight. The sanctum's collapse will be felt for miles. We need to leave before scavengers arrive. Agreed. Darian turned to his guards. Form up. We're heading back to Varkesh. Your Majesty, one of the guards said hesitantly, Lord Blackwood used your absence to seize the stronghold. He's declared himself regent until you return. If we go back, then we deal with a traitor. Darian's smile was dangerous. Good. I've been looking for an excuse. They made camp a mile from the sanctum ruins. Seren sat apart from the others, watching the fire. Regular fire this time. Campfire that warmed instead of destroyed. Talin approached, his burned arm wrapped in bandages. How's the arm? Seren asked. Healing. The healers say it'll scar, but I'll keep full mobility. He sat beside her. I heard what you did. Destroyed the entire sanctum. Yeah. That's incredible. It's terrifying. Can be both. Talin poked at the fire with a stick. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're okay. We all are. Even Mira? Especially Mira. She nearly died getting to you, fought through half the sanctum, killed 3 phoenixes herself. Talin glanced at her. She doesn't hate you, you know. She's just scared. We all are. Of me. Of change. You represent everything we thought we knew being wrong. He smiled. But that's not necessarily bad. Sometimes wrong is just different. Darian appeared at the edge of the firelight. Talin, bed. We leave at dawn. The prince stood, gave Seren a nod, and left. Darian sat in the space Talin had vacated. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Thank you, Seren said finally, for coming after me. You're under my protection. I meant what I said. Even after I nearly killed your son? Accidents happen in war. And make no mistake, this is war. Darian's eyes reflected the firelight. Blackwood's betrayal, the Flame Keepers, the other pack leaders questioning my authority. It's all connected. To me. To power. You're just the catalyst. He leaned back, studying the stars. When we return to Varkesh, things are going to get worse before they get better. Blackwood won't surrender easily. Neither will his allies. So what do? We give them a demonstration they can't ignore. Darian looked at her. You destroyed the sanctum, killed 7 phoenixes. That kind of power can't be hidden anymore. Shouldn't be hidden. You want me to fight. I want you to choose, fight beside me or walk away. I won't force you into this war. Seren thought about it, about running. Finding some quiet place far from wolves and fire and politics. But the fire in her chest pulsed, and she knew. Running wouldn't work, not anymore. She'd spent 21 years invisible, powerless, small. She was done being small. I'll fight, she said, but on one condition. Which is? No more cages, no more locked rooms. I'm not a prisoner you protect. I'm a weapon you aim. She met his eyes. Treat me like one. Darian's smile was slow and dangerous. Deal. He stood and extended his hand. Seren took it. When they rode into Varkesh 3 days later, Blackwood was waiting. He stood on the stronghold walls with 24 armed wolves, all loyal to him. The false king returns, Blackwood shouted, his voice carried across the courtyard. And he brings the monster with him. Darian dismounted slowly.
Stand down, Blackwood. I'm only going to ask once. You have no authority here anymore. The council voted. You're unfit to rule. The council you threatened into compliance? Darian's voice was cold. How many of them voted with knives at their throats? Blackwood's smile was ugly. Enough. This kingdom needs a king who puts wolves first, not some defect with delusions of grandeur. He gestured, and the wolves on the walls drew bows. Arrows knocked, aimed at Seren. Darian moved a step in front of her, but she caught his arm. No, she said quietly. This one's mine. She walked forward, alone, unarmed. The wolves tensed. Shoot her, Blackwood ordered. 20 arrows flew. Seren raised her hands. Fire erupted in a shield around her, incinerating the arrows before they got within 10 feet. The wolves on the walls backed away. I'm done hiding, Seren said, and her voice carried with unnatural clarity. I'm done apologizing for what I am. I'm a phoenix. I burn. And if you stand against your king, I'll burn you too. The fire spread, climbing the walls, not destroying, but demonstrating, showing exactly how much power she could wield, showing mercy by choosing not to. Blackwood's face went pale. One by one, his wolves lowered their weapons. Then they knelt. Blackwood stood alone on the wall, surrounded by fire, facing a power he couldn't fight. Last chance, Darian called up. Surrender or burn. Blackwood dropped to his knees. The gates opened. Darian's forces poured in, securing the stronghold without a single additional arrow fired. When the courtyard was secure, Seren let the fire fade. She was exhausted, shaking but standing. Darian approached, a smile playing at his lips. That, he said quietly, was perfect. That was terrifying. Still perfect. He looked at the kneeling wolves, at Blackwood being dragged away in chains, at his stronghold reclaimed without bloodshed. Then he looked at Seren. Welcome home, Phoenix. And for the first time in her life, Seren believed she might actually have one. The throne room was packed again, but this time the atmosphere was different. No murmurs, no sideways glances. Just silence heavy with anticipation and fear. Blackwood knelt in the center, hands bound, flanked by guards. His face was a mask of barely contained rage, but his eyes held something else now. Recognition. He'd finally understood what Seren was capable of, what she'd been holding back all along. Darian sat on his throne, fingers steepled, expression carved from ice. Lord Blackwood, you stand accused of treason, of attempting to overthrow your king, of conspiring with foreign enemies. How do you answer? I answer that I tried to save this kingdom from its own stupidity. Blackwood's voice was hoarse but defiant. You chose a monster over your own people. That's not leadership, that's insanity. Interesting. Darian leaned forward. And who were you working with? The Flamekeepers didn't infiltrate my stronghold alone. Blackwood's jaw tightened. He said nothing. We found correspondence in your quarters, Darian continued. Letters arranging payments, schedules for guard rotations, instructions on how to bypass the wards. He paused. You sold out your own pack for gold. I sold out nothing. I tried to eliminate a threat before it destroyed us all, by letting assassins into my home, by putting my son at risk. Darian's voice dropped to something dangerous. You didn't try to save anyone, Blackwood. You tried to seize power while pretending it was patriotism. And you're any different? Blackwood laughed bitterly. You keep that thing alive because it's useful. The moment it stops being useful, you'll kill it just like I would have. Don't pretend you're some enlightened ruler. You're just better at hiding your cruelty. Seren stood beside the throne, silent, watching. Part of her wanted to argue, to defend Darian's choices, but another part wondered if Blackwood was right. Was she just a weapon? A tool to be discarded when she outlived her usefulness? Darian's eyes flicked to her briefly, as if reading her thoughts. Then back to Blackwood. The difference, he said quietly, is that I see potential where you see threat. I see a person where you see a monster. That's what separates a king from a tyrant. Pretty words. Let's see how pretty they sound when she burns down half your kingdom. If she wanted to burn my kingdom, it would already be ash. Darian stood. Seren Vale has shown more restraint in 2 weeks than you've shown in 40 years. She's earned her place here. You've forfeited yours. Blackwood's face went pale. You're going to execute me. No. Darian's smile was cold. I'm going to let her decide your fate. The room erupted in whispers. Blackwood's eyes went wide. You can't. I just did. Darian turned to Seren. He conspired to have you killed, multiple times, sent assassins, undermined your safety at every turn. What do you think his punishment should be? Seren's mouth went dry. This was a test. She could see it in Darian's eyes, in the way the entire court held its breath. He was asking her to choose between mercy and vengeance, asking her to prove she was more than the monster they feared. She stepped forward, approaching Blackwood slowly. He flinched. Good. He should be afraid. She crouched down to his level, meeting his eyes. You're right about one thing, she said quietly. I am dangerous. More dangerous than you can imagine. I could kill you right now without lifting a finger. Just a thought, and you'd burn. Blackwood's breathing quickened. But I'm not going to. Seren stood. Because killing you would prove everything you've said about me. That I'm a monster. That I can't control myself. That I'm a threat to everyone around me. She looked at Darian. Exile him. Strip his titles. Send him somewhere far from here where he can't hurt anyone else. But let him live. The room was silent. Blackwood stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Darian's expression was unreadable. You're showing him mercy. I'm showing everyone else that I can. Seren's voice was steady. That being powerful doesn't mean being cruel. That having the ability to destroy doesn't mean you have to use it. Darian nodded slowly, then louder, to the court. Lord Blackwood is hereby stripped of all titles and lands. He will be escorted to the northern border and exiled. If he sets foot in Varkesh again, the sentence is death. Take him away. Guards hauled Blackwood to his feet. As they dragged him past Seren, he stopped. You'll regret this, he said. Mercy is weakness, and weakness gets you killed. Maybe, Seren said, but at least I'll die knowing I tried to be better than you. They took him away. The court remained silent. Then Talon started clapping. It spread slowly at first, then faster. Within moments, half the room was applauding. Not everyone. Some still looked terrified, some hostile. But it was a start. Darian dismissed the court, and as the room emptied, he approached Seren. That was well done. Was it? Or did I just look weak? You looked like a leader. He paused. Blackwood was right about one thing, though. Seren's stomach tightened. What? I do keep you here because you're useful, but not in the way he meant. Darian's eyes held hers. You're useful because you make me question my assumptions, because you show mercy when I'd show steel, because you're strong enough to choose peace when war would be easier. I'm also terrified every second of every day that I'll lose control and kill someone I care about. Good. That fear is what keeps you human. He smiled slightly. Monsters don't fear their own power. They revel in it. What if the fear isn't enough someday? Then we deal with it, together. Darian's hand rested briefly on her shoulder. You're not alone in this, Seren. Not anymore. What? 3 weeks passed. The stronghold settled into an uneasy peace. Blackwood's supporters either swore new loyalty or left quietly. The remaining pack leaders fell in line, though some still watched Seren with barely concealed hostility. Seren's training with Alara intensified. Hours every day working on control, on precision, on learning to call the fire without letting it consume everything. She was getting better, slowly. But the nightmares still came, always the same, the city burning. Cassia's face as the sanctum collapsed. The smell of burning flesh. She'd killed 7 people. The number haunted her. 7 lives ended because she'd chosen to burn instead of surrender. Were they justified? Yes. Did that make it easier? No. On the 22nd day, Mira found her on the eastern wall, staring out at the mountains. You look like someone killed your dog, Mira said, leaning against the parapet. I don't have a dog. My point stands. Mira was quiet for a moment. You're thinking about the sanctum. How did you know? Because I know that look. I've worn it myself. Mira's scarred hand tapped the stone. First kill, first 7. Ah, that's rough. Mira pulled out a flask and took a drink, then offered it to Seren. Seren shook her head. Your loss. Mira took another swig. You want my advice? Not particularly. Too bad. You're getting it anyway. Mira turned to face her. Stop torturing yourself. You did what you had to do. They were going to use you to resurrect a dead city and probably start a war. You stopped them. End of story. I burned them alive. And they would have drained you dry without blinking. Don't romanticize your enemies, Vale. They weren't misunderstood victims. They were fanatics who kidnapped you and put a torture device on your head. Seren flinched at the memory of the crown. You showed them more mercy than they deserved, Mira continued. You could have let that fire spread for miles, could have turned the entire waste into a crater. But you pulled it back, contained it. That takes strength. Or fear.
Same thing, sometimes. Mira capped her flask. Look, I'm not going to tell you it gets easier. It doesn't. Killing someone, even when it's justified, it changes you, but it doesn't have to break you. You get to choose what to do with that weight. What did you choose? To be better. Mira's smile was crooked, and to never waste a good opportunity to drink. She pushed off the wall. Training yard in an hour. Alara wants to work on your defensive barriers. She left.
Seren stayed on the wall watching the sunset and thought about choices, about weight, about becoming someone she could live with. The challenge came on the 30th day. A messenger arrived from the Southern Territories bearing a formal declaration. Lord Garrett, one of the most powerful pack leaders, was demanding a trial by combat, not against Darien, against Seren. This is insane, Talon said, reading the declaration over his father's shoulder. She's not even a wolf. How can he challenge her? He's not challenging her as a wolf. Darien's expression was grim. He's challenging her as a weapon of the crown, claiming she's too dangerous to exist, that if she can't defend herself in traditional combat, she should be destroyed. It's a loophole, Alara said from the corner, and a clever one. If she refuses, she looks weak. If she accepts and loses, she won't lose, Darien said flatly. How do you know? Because I've seen what she can do. He looked at Seren. The question is whether you're willing. Seren's hands were shaking. Trial by combat. That's to the death, right? Usually, but we can negotiate terms, first blood, submission. There are options. And if he refuses those options? Darien's silence was answer enough. Seren closed her eyes. Another choice. Another life potentially on her hands. When? She asked. 3 days? In the great arena. He wants it public. Of course he does. Seren opened her eyes. He wants everyone to see me either kill him or be killed. Either way, he wins. Either I'm a murderer or I'm dead. Not if you find a third option, Alara said. What third option? The seer's smile was enigmatic. That's for you to figure out. Training for the next 3 days was brutal. Alara pushed her harder than ever. Darien joined in, teaching her wolf fighting tactics, where they'd strike, how they'd move. Mira taught her dirty tricks, how to cheat without being obvious. Combat isn't about honor, Mira said, demonstrating a move that involved sand and eyes. It's about survival. Use every advantage. The night before the trial, Seren couldn't sleep. She sat in her room, her real room now, not a cell, and stared at her hands. These hands had killed. Tomorrow, they might kill again. A knock at the door. Come in. Darien entered carrying 2 glasses and a bottle. Thought you could use company. Or alcohol. Both. He poured, handed her a glass, and sat across from her. Nervous? Terrified. Good. Means you're thinking clearly. He sipped his drink. You know you don't have to do this. I could declare the challenge invalid, refuse it on your behalf. And look weak. Lose support. Give the other pack leaders ammunition. Seren shook her head. No, this is my fight. It's our fight. You're part of this court now. An attack on you is an attack on me. Is it? Seren met his eyes. Or am I still just the useful weapon? Darien was quiet for a long moment. You want honesty? Always. When I first kept you alive, it was political, strategic. You were useful. He paused. But somewhere between the assassinations and the resurrections, and watching you choose mercy over vengeance, it stopped being about strategy. What's it about now? I don't know. His smile was rueful, and that terrifies me more than any phoenix fire. Seren didn't know what to say to that. They sat in silence, drinking, until Darien finally stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you show Garrett and everyone else why mercy isn't weakness. What if I can't?
Then you show them why you're the most dangerous thing in this kingdom. He paused at the door. Either way, you win. After he left, Seren lay in bed and tried to imagine a third option. A way to win without killing. A way to prove her point without proving Garrett's. Just before dawn, she figured it out.
Yeah, the arena was packed. Every seat filled. Every balcony crowded. It seemed like the entire kingdom had come to watch. Seren stood in the center of the sand-covered floor, wearing simple fighting leathers. No armor, no weapons. Across from her, Lord Garrett waited. He was massive, easily twice her size, with arms like tree trunks and scars that told stories of 100 fights. He smiled at her. All teeth, no warmth, nothing personal, girl, but you're an abomination. Someone has to put you down. You're welcome to try. Darian stood in the royal box, flanked by Talon and the other pack leaders. His face was impassive, but Seren could see the tension in his shoulders. Alara stood beside him, silver hair catching the light. She caught Seren's eye and nodded once. Trust yourself. A horn blew. The fight began. Garrett shifted immediately. Bones cracked and reformed. Within seconds, a massive gray wolf stood where the man had been. He lunged. Seren didn't move. The wolf's jaws closed inches from her throat and stopped. A barrier of fire hung between them, thin as paper, hot as the sun. Garrett yelped and backed away, snout singed. I don't want to kill you, Seren said calmly. I don't want to hurt you, but I will defend myself. Garrett snarled and circled, looking for an opening. Seren turned with him, keeping the barrier between them. This is what you don't understand, she continued, raising her voice so the crowd could hear. Power isn't about how much destruction you can cause. It's about how much you can prevent. Garrett lunged again. The barrier expanded, becoming a dome. He hit it and bounced off, fur smoking. I could kill you, Seren said. Right now. One thought and you'd burn. But I choose not to, because I'm not the monster you think I am. Fight me, Garrett roared, his voice distorted by the wolf form. Quit hiding behind tricks. This isn't hiding. This is control. Seren's eyes blazed white gold. This is me showing you that I'm stronger than you, not because I can kill you, but because I can choose not to. She dropped the barrier. Garrett charged. Seren raised one hand and fire bloomed in her palm. Not a wall, not a weapon, a mirror. It hung in the air between them, reflecting Garrett's wolf form back at him. He skidded to a halt, staring at his own reflection. Look at yourself, Seren said quietly. You're terrified. Of me. Of change. Of losing control. She paused. But I'm not your enemy. Fear is. The mirror expanded, and in its surface, images began to form. Memories. Garrett's memories. Seren could see them as clearly as if they were her own. A younger Garrett, a family, children who died in a Phoenix attack 100 years ago. Not as children, but as ancestors. Grief passed down through generations until it became hatred. He was attacking her because of something she hadn't done, because of crimes committed by people she'd never met. I'm sorry, Seren said, and meant it. I'm sorry for what my kind did to yours, for the pain, the loss, the fear. She lowered her hand and the mirror faded. But I'm not them, and you're not your ancestors. We get to choose who we are. Garrett shifted back to human form, breathing hard, tears streaming down his face. You could have killed me, he said hoarsely. Yes. Why didn't you? Because killing you wouldn't change anything, wouldn't bring your family back, wouldn't make anyone safer. Seren extended her hand. But maybe showing mercy can start something new. Garrett stared at her hand. The arena was silent. Then, slowly, he took it. Seren pulled him to his feet. The crowd erupted. Not cheers exactly, but something close. Acknowledgement, recognition. She'd won without violence, proven her point without proving theirs. Garrett dropped to one knee. I yield, and I swear loyalty to the Phoenix. Not to me, Seren said. To your king. I'm just someone trying to survive. She looked up at the royal box. Darian was standing now, and the expression on his face was something she'd never seen before. Pride.
Fog.
The celebration that night was subdued but genuine. Pack leaders who'd refused to acknowledge Seren before now nodded when she passed. Some even spoke to her, asked questions, treated her like a person. Tallinn found her on the balcony overlooking the courtyard. "You did it," he said. "You actually did it." "Did what?" "Changed their minds, made them see you're not a threat." "Some of them. Others still want me dead. They're just quieter about it now. Progress is progress." Tallinn leaned on the railing. "My father wants to make you an official member of the court. Give you a title. Land, even." Seren's stomach twisted. "I don't want land." "What do you want?" She thought about it. About the life she'd lived in shadows and cages and fear. About the life she could have now. "I want to matter," she said finally. "Not because I'm powerful, not because I'm useful, but because I'm me." "You already do," Tallinn said. "To a lot of people." "Including you?" "Especially me. You saved my life twice. Taught me that strength isn't about how hard you can hit. That being afraid doesn't make you weak." He smiled. "You're kind of a terrible influence, actually. Now I keep questioning everything." Seren laughed. Actually laughed. It felt strange. Good. "There you are." Darien appeared in the doorway, and Tallinn took the hint. "I'll leave you two alone." He squeezed Seren's shoulder as he passed. Darien joined her at the railing, and for a moment they just stood there, watching the fires in the courtyard below. "You surprised me today," he said finally. "Good or bad surprise?" "Good. Definitely good." He paused. "I've been thinking about what you asked, about whether you're just a weapon." And I was wrong. You're not a weapon. You're a wildfire." He looked at her. "Unpredictable, dangerous, beautiful, and impossible to control. The best I can do is point you in a direction and hope for the best. That's a terrible strategy. I know, but it's honest." His smile was crooked. "You asked for honesty." "I did. Then here's more. I don't know what you are to me, ally, friend, something else. I just know that this kingdom is better with you in it, that I'm better with you in it." He paused. "And I hope you stay." Seren's throat tightened. "Even though I'm terrifying?" "Especially because you're terrifying. Terrifying means powerful, and power in the hands of someone with a conscience." He shook his head. "That's rare. Worth protecting." "I'm not sure I have a conscience. I killed 7 people who were trying to drain your fire and resurrect an army. Context matters." Darien's voice was gentle. "You're going to make mistakes, Seren. You're going to hurt people. Probably me, eventually. But that's not what defines you. Your choices do. And today you chose mercy. That's what matters." She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe she could be more than the sum of her worst moments. "I'll stay," she said quietly. "For now. But I need something from you." "Name it. Don't make me into a symbol. Don't put me on a pedestal. I'm just a person trying to figure this out. Treat me like one." "Deal." He extended his hand. She took it. And in that moment, standing on a balcony overlooking a kingdom that had once wanted her dead, Seren felt something she'd never felt before. Hope. Not the desperate hope of survival, but the quiet hope of possibility. That maybe she could build a life here. That maybe she could be more than what she'd been. That maybe the fire that had once defined her could become a tool instead of a curse. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. She knew that. There would be more challenges, more enemies, more moments where she'd have to choose between mercy and vengeance. But for the first time in her life, she believed she could handle it. Not because she was fearless, but because she'd learned that fear and strength weren't opposites. They were partners. And together, they could forge something new. 6 months later, Seren stood in the throne room again. But this time, she wasn't kneeling. She stood at Darien's right hand wearing the crimson and black of the royal guard. A position she'd earned through training and trust, and choosing mercy even when vengeance would have been easier. The court had gathered to witness the formal signing of the Phoenix Accords, a treaty that officially recognized Phoenixes as citizens of Varkesh with full rights and protections. It wouldn't bring back the dead, wouldn't erase 100 years of persecution, but it was a start. Lord Garrett was the first to sign, then the other pack leaders one by one. When the last signature was added, Darien turned to the assembly. Let it be known throughout Varkesh and beyond. The age of hunting is over. The age of understanding begins. We are stronger together than apart, and anyone who threatens that unity threatens the kingdom itself. Applause filled the chamber. Not everyone was happy. Some faces still held hostility. Some wolves still feared what Seren represented. But they'd signed the treaty. They'd agreed to try. And that was more than she'd ever hoped for. After the ceremony, Seren found herself alone in the courtyard, watching the sunset. Mira appeared beside her, as she often did these days. "You look thoughtful." "Just thinking about how far I've come. From servant to phoenix to royal guard. Not bad for 6 months. I'm still terrified most days." "So is everyone else. They're just better at hiding it." Mira nudged her shoulder. "You did good, Vale. Better than good. You changed the whole damn kingdom. We changed it. All of us. Don't get humble on me now. It's disturbing." But Mira was smiling. "Drinks tonight. Talon found some horrible wine he wants us to try." "Only if you promise not to make me spar afterward." "No promises." They walked back toward the stronghold together, and Seren realized something. She had friends. Real friends. People who saw her for who she was. Flaws and fears and fire, and chose to stand beside her anyway. She'd spent 21 years invisible, and now she couldn't hide if she tried. But for once, that didn't feel like a curse. It felt like freedom. Because being seen meant being known, and being known meant belonging. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't powerless. She wasn't the rejected one. She was Seren Vale, Phoenix of Varkesh, and she'd forged her own fate from the ashes of what everyone had expected her to be. The fire still burned in her chest. It always would. But now she controlled it, aimed it, used it to light the way forward instead of burning everything down. And that made all the difference. Because in the end, power wasn't about how much you could destroy. It was about what you chose to build. And Seren was just getting started.